So you want to dive into the editing world and start creating amazing content? Well, in today's video, we will be discussing and I will be teaching you how to use Premiere Pro. We will be discussing everything from importing footage all the way up to exporting your footage and everything in between, just to get you started. So this is an absolute beginner's guide. Let's go. Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Shaun and my mission here on YouTube is to help you to tell better stories with exceptional video content. So if my content delivers any value to your filmmaking career, I would urge you to consider subscribing by the end of the video so that you can get notified whenever I drop new content. So without further ado, let's jump right into Premiere Pro and get creative. Fantastic, guys. So we are currently in Premiere Pro. So when you open Premiere Pro for the first time, this is what you will be greeted with. So this is the first main screen that you will see. The first thing that you want to do is come over here to the left hand side where it says new project. Click on new project and it's going to open a window that's going to allow you to change some settings for the project. Okay, so first things first is you go to the name of your project and you can name it, for example, test. Then you can browse and choose where you want to actually drop that specific video. So for me, I'm going to drop it here under YouTube and I will just go to my YouTube folder and I will select this folder. Fantastic. So we've got a name and we've got a location. The next step for you is to determine your video rendering and playback. So over here with the renderer, you have your Mercury playback engine software only. So for some computers that the graphics card isn't initiated, you will have this option. Unless your graphics card is up to date, then you will be able to choose the option that says GPU acceleration. In most cases, I do utilize that, but because I am screen recording at the moment, I will just use the software engine. Alright, so the other details and settings I normally do not touch. So the other settings are normally untouched by myself. I just leave them out because I feel that everything is correct and I normally don't have to change anything. Then I will click on OK. So your project has opened and some of you will be greeted with a screen that's somewhat similar to this specific screen over here. However, there might be certain differences that you will note as soon as you open. Only reason why you will see some differences is because I have adapted my workspace to fit my needs. Okay, so you can also do that, and we will get to that in just a few seconds. Let's first get you started. Right, so over here you've got a bunch of different screens. To the right hand side I've got different working spaces. In the middle, this is where your video footage will be. Then on the left side we've got a bit of a panel over here that will hold most of your footage, etc. will be listed on the left hand side, and at the bottom we've got a media sequence. So we will be working with all of these screens. First things first is you need to set up some bins so that you can get started. If you don't see any of these spaces or windows, you can always activate them by coming up to your window ribbon over here. Click on window and then select the one that you want to activate. So let's say, for example, you want to activate essential sound. Click on that and the panel will open. As you can see here on the right hand side, the panel has opened and you will be able to utilize that specific workspace. If you want to get rid of a specific workspace, click on the three bars and say close panel, and it's as easy as that. Right, so you can also expand and create your spaces a bit smaller or larger as you prefer, and at the end of the day you will be able to adapt and change everything on the specific workspace. Okay, moving on. We obviously need some footage to get us started. Now, one of the most important tips that I can give you is to actually create bins, which allows you to organize your footage, your music, your audio files, your B-roll, drone folders, etc. Right, so first things first, you're going to come to the left hand side on your project tab and you will right click and then click on import. Now it's going to open options here for you to be able to import into your project. So I will then quickly find some footage and import that. Okay, so now that you have found your footage, what you will do is you will select the footage. You can either choose one clip, hold in Control, and select the other clips, or you can Control A to select all your clips, and then you click on Open as soon as you've chosen all the clips that you want to import into your project. So depending on the folder size that you are actually importing, it may differ in times that it will take to upload. So now you can see all of our footage is here on our left hand side. However, there's a bit of a problem that will persist over here, and it's something that I've already mentioned with the name bins. Right, so first of all, let's create some bins and put these folders in our bin. So right click, say new bin, and we'll say footage. Fantastic. So let's select all of this footage, right, and then drag and drop it into our footage bin. Now you can see it has 8 items, and let's create another bin for music, and so on and so forth. So you can go crazy and create a bunch of bins depending on what you need it for. If you need to create one for A-roll, B-roll, sequences, whatever the case is, make sure that you create bins and stay organized. So I've got one for music. I will right click and say import. I will select the song over here that I want to import, and I will click on open. Now it will import my audio track. Alright, so now we've got 2 bins, couple of different items. Let's create a sequence. Right click in your project window, say new item, and click on sequence. Now it's going to greet you with a bit of a window that might feel overwhelming, but don't stress too much about that. I would recommend go to settings, which is the second window at the top, and go to custom. Alright, now we can create our own custom preset. So time base in general, here in South Africa we use the PAL system, and in general that would be 25 frames per second timelines. Make sure that your video size, depending if you are shooting 4K, HD or Full HD. In my example we are creating Full HD footage, and that's the general specifications at this point in time for the film industry. So frame size 1920 by 1080, which is a vertical, vertical we've got 1080 pixels, and horizontally we've got 1920 pixels. Okay, so that gives us an aspect ratio of 16 by 9. The rest of the information you can leave as is, square pixels, no fields. Just make sure that your display format resonates with whatever time base you have chosen. Working color space Rec 709, and the rest you can leave as is. Down here at the bottom, width and height, you can also make sure that that is exactly the same as your frame size at the top. You don't necessarily have to maximize your bit depth or maximum render quality. You can leave those as is for now. You can dive into those at a later stage. Now you can save this preset as my own preset, for example. You can put a description in if you want. However, let's just click on OK, and you have created your own preset. So now it's loading all the different presets, and you've saved your preset, and there we go. So now your preset is here. It says my own preset. You can change your sequence name to whatever you want. If it's John and Jane's wedding or whatever the case is, you can change your sequence name and you can say OK. Now it will create a sequence. This is getting exciting. We can see something different happening over here. In the middle of your screen you will be greeted with a black screen. This is not to be stressed about. This is just where your video footage will be appearing. And at the bottom here we have our timeline or sequence with different bars as well. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing that you want to do is you want to create a music track, right? So music, if you are editing to the music, I would I would definitely recommend that you drag in your music first and then your footage second. So let's choose this track and we'll drag it onto our audio track. So the top is for video and the bottom is for audio. You can create more tracks as you go along. However, I will just keep it as is for now, just to keep it basic and simple for you guys. If you want to go back to your project, you can click on this little arrow bin file thing over here, and you will be able to go back to your footage. Right, so let's double click on the footage and it's going to load in all of our footage. So first things first, let's listen to the song and see what it sounds like. Perfect. So now we've had a listen to the song. We know it, plus or minus what it sounds like. Let's start importing footage onto our timeline to make a video. Click and drag your footage onto your timeline. You can select multiple footage as well. Let's say, for example, we want to choose all of this and drag it onto the timeline. Now you will see there's a bit of an issue over here. It's trying to drag in your audio and your video files at the same time. So this is a general thing that will happen. What you can do is just drag down to where you want your audio to be, which is not going to override your first audio clip. So just drag it downwards. It's not an issue. There we go. So let's say you want to unlink this audio tracks from your video track. That's also easy. You can select all of them like this, right click and say unlink. Now what you can do is choose all your audio tracks and delete them. So what you do now is you choose your video tracks and you can align them on the same visual track as the other clip. What you can do is also you can snap it to the end of that video so that there's no black gaps. Okay, so let's just give it a test run, see what it looks like with the video footage imported. So right off the bat you can see there's a bit of an issue over here. This is because this video clip is a 720 video clip, which is an HD clip, right? So let's say, for example, we want to enlarge this so that it fits to the whole frame. That's a very easy step to do. You're going to go over to your effects controls. You're going to go to scale and you're going to make that 150. There we go. You can also choose how big or how small do you want it. However, 150 will be the correct one to create a full HD frame. Next up, let's have a look. Here we have a reel running. Then we have a bit of a bush grass thing going on here, dead flowers. And then next up, we've got universal. So this looks a bit big, and this is because this is 4K footage. What you would want to do is you want to make it smaller. So go to 50 on the scale and that will immediately bring it back to where you want it. Once again, you can go smaller or you can go bigger. However, if it's 4K footage on a full HD timeline, which we created or sequence that we created, you want to make it 50% of your scale. Okay, and then let's have a look at the last clip, what that looks like. Perfect. Right, so let's have a look quickly at what the sequence will look like. Okay, so it's dragging on a little bit and we don't want that. We want to have the footage be dynamic with the audio track. So what we can do is we hold in Alt on our keyboard and we scroll up on the mouse wheel while hovering on the timeline over here on the video tracks, and then what we do is we can now cut our footage. So let's just give it a listen. So where the next bar starts, so let's do this. On that high note, we want to maybe change the video, for example. So what you'll do is you press the C button on your keyboard, or you'll go to your razor tool. You click on the video on the playhead exactly. You press V to choose your arrow tool, your selection tool. Click on that and delete. Now you will see there's a bit of a space here. You can either drag this footage on the timeline, or you can right click and choose ripple delete. it will clear the empty space up. So let's have a look. There we go. So now it already looks a bit better. There we go. So now we can see in the waveform over here. So you can enlarge the waveform by hovering over the channel over here at the left hand side, holding Alt and scrolling up on your mouse wheel, you will see the audio track enlarging. So we can see in the waveform we've got a bit of action happening here in the music. Let's play with that action and see what we can do. So you will press on the C button, then you'll cut the footage by clicking on the timeline on the footage. Press the V button, which is your selection tool, and we'll delete this track. Now once again we've got our open space, right click, ripple delete. Now we've got our next footage. There we go. So now we want to play with this action a little bit. So what we can do is we can once again bounce back over here, C for razor, click, and what I think we should do is let's just play with this a little bit and be creative and cut according to the music. So as you can see, we are aligning each of these audio waves with where the cuts are, and we will delete each second clip. There we go. And what we can do now, let's say for example you want to go back and choose some footage from the previous clip that you've created or that you've imported, right? So drag it up, and you'll see when you hover over the end of the clip, it will create a little bit of a red arrow. Drag that out, and then you will see it's now over this footage, right? So it will always display the top footage first. So if there's footage on top of another clip at the bottom, this one at the top will be displayed and not the one at the bottom. Okay, so please be aware of that fact. Let's just create a bit of a gap. Let's play that and show you what it looks like. Okay, not exactly what we want. So let's also create cuts over there. What we'll do is we'll remove that one that aligns with that clip and that one, and let's see what that looks like now. Oh yes, there we go. So very interesting effect that we've just created there by just cutting to the music and creating a bit of a different feel. So now you know how to cut using your razor tool, selecting tool, etc, etc. Right, so let's cut through this sequence and build something. So what we can do now is let's actually end off this project, right? So now let's say for example you've now imported all your footage, you've cut everything according to the music or the voice or whatever you would like to do, and you want to now export your video, right? But before you can export it, you can't just leave it like this. What you need to do is you need to cut the audio track at the end. You can click on the excess audio, you can delete that. Then we want to fade out the audio. There's one of two ways to do this. You can either press the P tool, which is your pen tool. You can then go to the audio track on this little gray line over here, which controls the volume of your track. Click on it, it's going to create a keyframe, okay? And you can click where you want it to end, right? And drag it down. So you can drag it either up or down to fade it in or out, make it louder or softer. Let's see what that sounds like. Perfect. Now we've got a nice fade out. There's one more way to actually do this, right? And that is by going to your effects panel and choosing fade. It will give you a bunch of different options, but you would like to come to crossfade and maybe choose constant power. Drag it over your footage or over the audio track, and let's see what that sounds like. It's a bit of a harsh downslope, if I can put it like that. So let's extend this fade by hovering over here and dragging it all the way to where you want the fade to start. And there we go, we've got a nice fade out. So I think that's perfect. Next up, we can't just end the video on a black. It just goes black completely. If that's the style that you're into, perfect, go for it. However, let me show you one of the amazing effects that we can use called dip to black. Type in dip in your effects panel. Once again, if effects is not showing up there, you can go to window and choose effects. Alright. However, mine is there already. Go to dip to black and apply it to your footage. Now you will see there's a little bit of an effect going on there. Holding Alt scroll wheel up, and you can drag it out so that it fades out to black a bit more graciously. Let's have a look. Okay, so this might sometimes happen where you see a bit of a stutter when viewing footage back, especially when you start applying effects, etc. So what you want to do is the first thing to play it back a bit smoother, you can choose the quarter resolution over here, or you can render that part of the footage. So let's create an in and an out point. So let's go here, you'll create an in point, and let's go to the out point and you'll press O. So at the start here, we've pressed I on our keyboard, and at the end, we pressed O. I for in, O for out. You can also use this over here, which is your mark in or mark out tool, which it does exactly the same thing. So let's render that sequence. So you'll go to the top, you'll choose render into out, and we will just let it render for a couple of seconds. Okay, so it's rendered and it started playing. So you will see at the top here, there's red and there's green. Whatever is green is already rendered, so that will play back smoothly in full HD. The red part hasn't been rendered as yet. So what you would want to do is maybe go to full, which is full HD, full value, and let's play that back. There we go, and we've got a smooth fade out. So what we want to do in general is just render and play back so that you can watch it in full resolution to see if your focus is on, if everything is working perfectly. I would also always recommend that you render your full sequence, watch it back first, and then export. Okay, but before we export today, I want to show you guys one or two tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. First things first, you can choose the tilde key to enlarge any of the spaces. Now the tilde key is the one underneath escape next to the number 1 on your keyboard. Right, so when you press the tilde while hovering over any of your panels or workspaces, it will enlarge that workspace for you to see a bit better. So for example, let's say we want to focus a bit more on our timeline. Hover over the timeline with your mouse, press the tilde key, and Bob's your uncle. You will see an enlarged version of the timeline. If you press tilde again, it will make it small again. So let's say we want to watch our footage back a bit bigger because we can't see properly. We'll hover over the screen over here, press tilde and space to start playing. Space to pause and tilde to go back. Okay, so that's just a quick, easy tip that I can give you guys to make your playbacks a bit smoother. So let's say we want to watch the whole thing back, right? But we won't be able to do it in full HD because this is still red, okay? We're going to go to the part at the beginning of the video. We're going to create the in point by clicking on this mark or pressing I on our keyboard. And then we will go to sequence and render into out. So guys, while this is rendering, I know this is a bit tedious to get started in the beginning. For me, it's second nature already. So maybe, yes, in the beginning, it's going to take a bit long. That's why I'm repeating some of these things. And I know the tutorial might get a bit, my apologies, the tutorial might get a bit long in general. However, I could always recommend that, you know what, pause a little bit, practice a little bit, and play the video continuously throughout so that you learn with me. As I talk or as you're watching the YouTube video, try it out for yourself on your PC. Okay, so let's watch the sequence back that we have created. We'll go to the tilde key and we'll enlarge this space over here. That's perfect. And let's press space, or you can go to the bottom and say play. And that's, once again, that's it, guys. So you've just created your own first video. How awesome is that? So what you want to do now, after you've rendered it, you've watched it back, and you are quite happy with the results, you will need to export your video. So what you will be doing is you go to File at the top of your screen, then you'll go to Export and you'll choose Media. Then it will greet you with a window that pops up, and you will be able to change settings for your export. Now in general, there's not much settings that you really need to change. However, let's have a look. A preset, I would always recommend going to high quality 1080p HD. This is, in my opinion, the best export. Unless you really want to export high quality 4K footage, you can do that as well if your PC can handle that. Maybe go to 1080p HD. And you can type in some comments if you really want. However, I just leave it open. And output name, you can change it. Right, so for now it's test MP4, but it's going to my desktop, right? So you can change where you want this to actually go, choosing documents or videos or whatever the case is. You can choose anywhere you want to drop this video. You can do that and just click on save. So when you choose save, let's leave it over here. You can change the file name as well. Let's make it test and click save. There we go. Now we've changed the output name. Just double check your width and your height. Make sure it is the aspect ratio is linked with each other to make the horizontal and vertical lines equal with each other, so that the one is not wonky, and you change the aspect ratio, whatever, unless you want to create black bars at the top or the bottom, but we'll jump into that tutorial a bit later, or you can look it up on YouTube as well. The rest of the information I just leave as is. The computer knows best, Premiere Pro knows best, and let's click on export. So it just created a rendered file for the audio, and now it's encoding the file test. Okay, so that basically just means that you are currently exporting your video. Guys, that is it for Premiere Pro. So it's not that difficult. I think if there are any other questions that you might have regarding Premiere Pro, please make sure that you drop it in the comments for me, so that we can discuss those questions. I can answer them as thoroughly as I possibly can, or perhaps create another video for you guys to be able to view that. So now you can see you've successfully exported your first video. Congratulations. Now that you know how to get creative, jump into Premiere Pro yourself and start creating content. That's all from me, Shaun D. Until next time, keep telling stories.